Hey everyone, Peshek.dev here. Today I'm going to walk you through the 2026.2 release notes. And for anyone who's new to these videos that I do, I'm going to walk you through some of the major changes that happen, show you how you can integrate them in your setup, and also walk you through how to deal with some of the breaking changes that come with this release. We're giving you object lifecycle management. So now admins can automatically schedule periodic reviews of authentik and have people audit applications, groups, roles to make sure that they're meeting compliance needs. We added WS Federation. So WS Federation is a protocol very similar to SAML. It's very common in Microsoft environments. We now support WS Fed. We've also made some major improvements to the SCIM provider in the way that we handle group imports and user imports, along with some sync improvements if there's groups that already exist on the SCIM server you're syncing with. We made some changes to the endpoint devices. You can now integrate Fleet to pull some data from your Fleet integrated devices, and added local device logon for Linux, and also added support for WebAuthn. There's some updates to the certificate builder. We now support ED25519 and ED448 for certificate generation. Some big changes were made to the SAML Provider and SAML Source, which we will go into a little bit more detail on later. The documentation page, we added some first steps to help it easier to get started after you've set authentik up. And we've updated to use Python version 3.14. Python, if you will. Noting with this that there's not really a lot to show, but I'm kind of just letting you know that we have done that. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is the release frequency change. So recently we've been doing a release every 2 months. We have decided to change this to every 3 months. Just gives us a little bit more time to make sure these releases are really tight and make sure that we're giving you the best releases possible. Now, even though we're going to release less often, we are still going to continue to support the 2 most recent releases with security coverage. So that means we're going to support over a wider window for you guys. A big feature of this release is the object lifecycle management feature. So admins can now schedule and track periodic reviews for things like applications, groups, and roles. So it is an enterprise-only feature. It is in preview. If you want to check it out, please reach out to me and I'll see what I can do about getting you set up. I'm going to walk you through how to make an object lifecycle rule and what this process of reviewing an application looks like. I'm going to call this quarterly application review. You do want to spell words correctly. And if we don't select a specific application, it'll simply select all applications, right? Set this to 90 days. Give people a 30-day grace period. We're not monsters here, you know? And I've made a group called Security Reviewers, which contains the people that we expect to do the reviews. So we'll just select and say this, and it will automatically update the people in the group, letting them know that they have security reviews they need to do. We can set the minimum amount, so if we needed at least 3 people to review it, we could set that. I'm going to leave it at 1. And we're going to say to update people via email. So I have already configured this authentik instance to use email. I'm going to click create. And now we can see when we check our emails here, there's a user counter I created with an email. They received an email. And access review is due for application bookstack. And now I'm going to log back in as Connor and show you this review process. So I am logged in as Connor. I do just want to show that, the person could also click the email link here, or they can manually come over here to events and reviews. Now, Connor sees that they have these couple reviews pending that they need to do. If we click on Bookstack, you can see that we're taken to the Lifecycle tab, and you can go through, verify that the entitlements are appropriate, the bindings are appropriate, all the different aspects, and if everything looks good, click Confirm Review, give your notes, everything looks great, also right there, right, confirm that, and if we go back, we can see that review is now removed. So object lifecycle management can be used to make sure that your applications, groups, and roles are all staying compliant, double checking that there's no misconfigurations, and verifying things like certain roles don't have permissions they shouldn't, or certain people weren't accidentally added to groups that they shouldn't be in. So if you're interested in this feature, please reach out and I'll see what I can do about getting you set up. So another thing we've done this release is make some updates to the endpoint devices and the authentic agent. So we now support a fleet connector integration for your endpoint devices. You can pull device facts and signals from fleet into authentic and set up conditional access rules. And one other change we've made is local device login now works on Linux, and it also supports WebAuthn passkeys. I'm also going to walk through that demo in a minute. But first, let's start with the endpoint devices with Fleet. So right now in Fleet, I have my MacBook registered. You can see some details about it. If we come over here to Authentic, come to the endpoint devices, you can see I don't have anything registered at the current moment. So I'm now going to register Fleet with Authentic. And all we have to do that is create an API user in Fleet. So we can run the following command using fleetctl. We're going to create a new user. We're just going to call it API user. Set the email and password. Say it's API only. And give it the global role of admin. This command will be referenced in the description below. Now when we create that, you'll see that we get a API token here. Let's go ahead and copy that. And now we're just going to go to our connectors here. We're going to create a new connection for Fleet. Let's call it Fleet. I'm going to put our API token right here. And the Fleet server URL, which is just the host name of wherever Fleet is at for you. Like so. And I have done a little magic to actually put the proper URL to my Fleet off screen, but that was inputted. Now you can see if I go to my devices, we have that same MacBook from Fleet registered. You can see different system details. You can see what software is installed and other things like that. So this integration is pretty easy to set up. Now I'm going to walk through a demo of setting up the local device login on Linux. Now there's 3 things that we need to do to set this up. The first thing is to configure Authentic to work with agents. The second thing is to configure your Linux device. Then the third thing is setting the users that you want to be able to use this feature. So we actually need to configure Authentic to support using the Authentic agent. Those steps are on the configuration page here. I'm going to link them in the description and walk through them a little bit. So we're going to need to create the device code flow, create an OAuth application and provider combo to support logging in with the Authentic agent. And we'll need to create a connector. So the first thing we'll do is create and apply the OAuth device code flow. Let's go to our flows and stages. We'll click flows, create for the name, default device code flow, title, device code flow. The designation will be stage configuration, and this will be require authentication. Go ahead and create that. Then going to create our provider application combo and call it authentic CLI, OAuth 2. I'm going to make it public and set the client ID to authentic-CLI. And I think CLI is nicer. I like saying CLI. Now we're going to add the scope mapping of offline access and submit it. Final thing we're going to need to do is create the Authentic agent connector. So we'll go to Endpoint Devices, connectors, create the agent connector as opposed to the fleet connector from before. Call it agent. Select the authentic CLI provider we just made. Click Finish. Now after you've gone through these steps, we are going to need to configure the Linux agent. Some of these steps I'm going to move a little bit past, but you are going to install the authentic CLI, the authentic agent, other dependencies, and you will need these dependencies also in order for this to work. After you've installed that, we're going to connect the authentic agent. For deployment name, it's just whatever you want to name your authentic deployment. We're going to call this AK main, and then go ahead and put in your authentic URL here. Now I'm going to move forward with this authentic.company placeholder. I'm going to use Studio Magic to fix this later. You do need to put your own URL here though. Now we need an enrollment token. So if we head back, we come to our agent here. See here we can create an enrollment token. This will be for our Debian system. I'm going to call it Debian. Click Create. We can then copy the token, paste it, and submit. Now the final thing we need to do is make a group in Authentic of the users that we want to be able to use the local device login feature on Linux. We're going to create a group, add the users to it, and then we're going to make a device access group and attach our Linux machine and our users to the device access group. So in Authentic, I'm going to go to Directory and Groups. Create a new group. I'm going to call it Linux Users. I'm going to come to my users, and I have this user Debian. I'm going to add Debian to the Linux Users group. Now, I'm going to go to Endpoint Devices and Device Access Groups. I'm going to create a group, call it Linux. I'm going to bind Linux users, then come to my device, click Edit, and for Device Group, select Linux. Now we have users properly set to log in. Now that everything's configured, it's time to test the login on our Linux device. I'm going to run su-debian. You'll see I'm prompted for the authentic password. And I'm now logged into that user. Now this release brings some pretty big changes to the SCIM provider. If a SCIM server had an existing group on it that matched the name of a group in Authentic, when you would go to sync, you'd run into an error. That has been fixed. A big shout out to BitPavel for implementing this for us. We really appreciate that. We've now also altered the way that users and groups sync with SCIM servers. Before, you filtered users by selecting a group on the provider. Now you filter users through application bindings, and you now can filter the groups that are synced by setting groups on the provider. Big shout out to Emmanuel von Neumann for implementing this feature for us. We really appreciate that. Now I'm running a SCIM server locally, and I'm going to show you how some of this configuration works and what it looks like in your SCIM server. So quickly, I've just set up this Authentic instance to have a couple of users and groups configured in it to show this off. So we have the finance group, which has Alice and Bob. We have the engineering group with Charlie, the marketing group with Don, and Elvis with no group. Now, one thing we changed here is how group syncing works. We have a group filter. In this group filter, I've added engineering and finance. So since I'm deciding to sync engineering and finance, this would be the group that Alice, Bob, and Charlie are in. When you add groups to the filter, this means that the other groups are not synced. So if this is empty, we would sync all the groups. Since these two are selected, they're the only two that do get synced. And I'm going to show you what this looks like now. So I'm going to run that SCIM sync and come over here to the groups. And we're going to see that engineering and finance are the only two that got synced. However, I also want to show you that with the users, all users were still synced, regardless of the group they were in. So we have also added a way to filter out which users are synced, but this works through setting a binding on the application. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to come to the application, go to our bindings, and I'm going to bind an existing policy user group, right? And I'm actually going to set marketing Now I've also gone ahead and I've quickly wiped my SCIM server, and I'm now going to run this task again. So now you'll see with that set, Don, who if you remember, is inside of our marketing group, is now the only person that was synced, the only user. So you can control which users are synced through the policy bindings, and you can control which groups are synced directly from the provider. Now, another feature that we added here is the ability to sync with existing groups in your SCIM server. I have made a group called existing group on the SCIM server. I've also made a group called existing group inside of authentik. Before, if you would have went to do this, authentik would have returned an error. But now, we can see that this finished without any errors. You can look over, see that the groups are here, and everything worked successfully. Now, another feature we've added with this release is the support of the WS Federation protocol. This is a protocol very similar to SAML and is commonly used in the Microsoft ecosystem. And I also do want to note this is an enterprise-only feature. Now, to show this off, we have a little demo Docker container that's set up just to run a basic WS Fed integration. So I'm just going to walk through configuring that and showing you what that looks like. First, we're going to need to make a new WS Fed provider. Click WS Federation. Now I'm just going to call it Microsoft. Most likely going to be a Microsoft environment product. Now, the two pieces of information that you need to give are the reply URL and the realm. You can get both of those from your WS Fed provider. Additionally, do make sure that you have a signing certificate set. After all that's set, you just hit Finish. And then head over to your applications. I'm going to create, I'm also going to call it Microsoft. Set that. Click Create. Now, the main thing you're going to need to do, you're going to need to give your metadata URL to your WS Fed provider. I've already configured this, but you can simply click Copy Download URL, get that URL, and give it to the provider. Now, I'm going to log in via SP initiated login. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the URL. And you'll see that I'm instantly logged right in. So there's quite a few changes that we made to the SAML provider, both if you make the provider manually or if you import it using metadata. We've done a lot of changes around encryption certificates, so I'm going to start there, and I'm going to start with a little bit of an explanation on how the encryption process works with SAML. In SAML, the service provider has a public certificate and a private key. The provider shares its public certificate with the IDP. The service provider will encrypt its authn request with the private key, send it to authentik, and then authentik uses the public certificate to decrypt that. And then in the reverse, when authentik sends the SAML response, it will encrypt it using the SP's public certificate. There was a bug where if you didn't save both the public certificate and private key in authentik, you weren't able to set an encryption certificate. We have corrected that. Now, because SAML assertions themselves can be signed, or the whole response can be signed, depending on the option you select, it can affect the order in which signing and encryption need to happen. So we fixed a bug where response signatures could be created in the wrong order. We also moved the ACS binding field down in the form. We're going to eventually sunset it because most providers only support post. That is the default in the SAML spec. Although there are a handful of service providers that do support redirect, it's extremely rare and they always support post anyways. We also recently added the import SAML provider from metadata option to the application provider combo wizard. If you haven't tried that yet, we recommend using it the next time you set up a SAML application. I've also done some updates to the SAML Source. So if you are using some other IDP to log into authentik with SAML. So if you used Shibboleth before, there is an error. They would send a username that was longer than 150 characters. We weren't able to handle that. We have updated that. There was a little bit of a problem when our authn request was sent. We would add the signature to the body of the authn request as well as in the query params on the redirect binding. This usually isn't a problem, but certain really strict IDPs would get upset. So we have fixed that, and it's no longer in the body. It's only in the query params where it's supposed to be. We also fixed the proper order of verifying signatures with encrypted assertions. And the final thing is status messages. Status messages are part of a SAML response and usually can contain data about something that went wrong during the SAML process. However, it is allowed for an IDP to return a OK status message. We did have a bug where if we received a OK status message, we would still throw an error. So we have fixed that. And most of these things, to be honest, are relevant to Shibboleth. So if you are someone who uses Shibboleth, we have much better support for that now. Please give the integration a try. Let us know what you think. So for the certificate builder, I'm going to show you guys just in the UI how you can go about using this feature, making new certificates. If you click on System and go to Certificates, here you see that we can generate a certificate key pair. Call this one ED448. And you can see we have the new options. Before we only had RSA and ECDSA. But now you can generate either of these two. You can see it tells you right here that we have this new certificate type generated. So in the documentation page, we've added a first step section. So if you're watching through this video and you're new to authentik and you haven't gone through these steps yet, it will be linked below. Now the first steps will walk you through what you do after you've done your initial setup. So you've got authentik running, you've done initial setup and set up the AK admin user. This page will walk you through things like setting up your first application provider combo, making your first user, other steps like that. So go ahead and check that out if you haven't done this yet or you're just curious about playing with authentik. So the first breaking change this release is the SCIM group syncing behavior. So previously, you could filter which users were synced by selecting a group on your provider. In this release, you filter the users you want to sync by putting a binding on the application. So I'm quickly going to show you what that looks like and the warning you'll get when you go to upgrade and how to fix it. So I'm on an authentik instance of 2025-12. This instance is set up so that I have group A with user A inside, group B with user B, and user C not in a group at all. This has the user filtering section set with the group of group A. So this means that when it syncs, only the users in group A will sync, which I've already ran that. You'll see under the users, we have user A, so this is correct. But you'll see that all groups are still actually synced. So Group B, Group A, and the default authentic groups. So I'm now going to upgrade this server. I'm going to show you the error that you would get when you upgrade, and then show you how you would get this same logic once you upgrade. So I've now upgraded this instance to 2026.2.1. Now, the first thing we want to do is go to events and logs. And if you did have SCIM Provider configured before, you're going to see this configuration warning. It's going to see here, filter group, the singular option before, has been removed and now is group filters. It's a multiple select option. And the configuration's been migrated, but also to prevent any errors, to prevent you accidentally automatically syncing things, we automatically enable dry run mode on that SCIM provider. So if we head over, we go to Laravel, we edit, see enable dry run mode. So now if we want to get back to the logic before, because if you remember, if we were to sync, if we were to just disable dry run and then hit sync, we wouldn't send all groups over. We would only sync group A, and we'd end up sending all the users. So to make things work the way it did before, we're going to leave the dry run mode on, and we're actually going to leave this section completely. We're going to head to applications and go to the Laravel was the application my SCIM provider was attached to. So go to the application your SCIM provider was attached to. We're going to policy group user bindings. And I'm going to bind the group A, right? Now, binding this makes it so that only the users in group A are synced to my SCIM server. And we're going to go back to the provider. So we're going to remove group A and disable dry run mode. And now this will make the sync work exactly the same way it did before. Now you may, though, want to go in, you may have never wanted all groups to sync. If you only want to sync the groups of the users that you're also syncing, you could select sync group A only, and update. And after that, you could wipe any previous groups you had in your server. So you'll see that all groups were synced. I just wiped my server. After having set the group filter, going to hit play, we will now see that is the only group synced. So that is both how you get back to the previous logic you had before, and that's also an update on how the logic works. Just make sure to check your event logs here and look for that configuration warning. Now, one of the breaking changes this release is with the update to the group's property mapping. So previously, if you wanted to pull a user's groups inside of a policy, you would use user.ak_groups. We've now changed that to be just user.groups. So for now, it'll just trigger a warning. It gives you some time to realize that that's going on, and you can go in and update that. It will eventually be deprecated, but you have a little bit of time. So you can see I have a policy just called groups. We're going to go in here. We can see that I use user.ak_groups here. I just print out the group name. I'll run that real quick just to show you. ak-admin, only in the authentic admins group right now. So that's correct. And you'll see that we get this warning, deprecation used, right? So, but it still works. And all you need to do is find anything where you have that. Just remove that. And we'll test that again just to show that now works. Still shows our group, and we don't have the deprecated warning. So that's all you have to do for this. If you want to upgrade your authentic instance to the latest release, the steps are pretty straightforward. I have this Docker Compose running right here. It is 2025.12. I'm just going to copy this command here, which will pull down the new Docker Compose and run it. I am running a couple instances, so I did get this error. However, I do promise you it works perfectly fine. And there's similar steps you can follow if you're using Kubernetes. This release does bring a handful of new integration guides. Big shout out to AKA Soren, shout out to Steal Your Dev, and shout out to Dominic and Dewey, both on the internal team at Authentik. We've added integration steps for Affine, Arcane, Datadog, Elastic Cloud, and Okta. Some pretty big ones in there. The Okta integration is setting up Okta as an identity provider to help with people who might want to transition from having used Okta to coming to Authentik. But everyone, that's it for this release. Like we said, the next release is going to be 3 months from now in May. It's sad that I have to wait a little bit longer to see everyone, but I really do love making these videos for y'all. I'm really glad that everyone has gotten good results from these and gotten to leverage them. If you want to be featured in a video, your code to be featured, make a pull request. We'd love to show off some of the stuff our contributors are doing, and we appreciate getting to work with y'all. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below, or come join the Discord channel. You can send me a DM anytime, ask a question to anyone in there if you need help. And thank you guys so much. See you next time.